It's time for the podcast you've been waiting for, the one where we celebrate Arsenal keeping a clean sheet. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We have 100 minutes at least worth of content ready for you on Arsenal's defensive solidity, how it's been built, the recruitment that led to it, the system that ensures that we don't concede. We'll cover every angle of our not conceding. There will be 32 seconds on our attack at the end of the pod. No, I'm kidding. We are going to discuss Arsenal misfiring, not firing. You can't misfire if you don't fire. Maybe that's the news. Don't fire because you might misfire. We will talk about the attack not firing. We'll try to keep that mostly focused on the game and not all the wider issues around the club, although we will inevitably lead to discussing all the wider issues in the club. We're going to get to the Champions League game against PSV, how we confront a season now that feels inevitably tied just to the Champions League and less to the league, although there may be jeopardy there. We'll talk about the sporting director candidates coming into focus per David Ornstein and some reporting coming from The Athletic. So all of that is there. Did a countdown episode with Tim this week where we covered 10 major issues affecting Arsenal in the moment. I mean, look, are they major issues affecting Arsenal in the moment? Your mileage may vary, but we sort of crowdsourced things people wanted us to talk about. And if you're curious what they are, it's things like, how good are Liverpool actually? What's the lowest acceptable outcome for our season? Allocating the percentage of responsibility for our season to things like injury, refereeing, recruitment, the manager, and the player performance. Must address positions this summer. When Saka and Martinelli are back, what's our best 11 for the rest of the season? Some stuff on Mikel, some stuff on Rice and Odegaard. That's all in there, and you can get that over on Patreon if you want. And if you use code AVP, it's just $2.50 for that first month. So an easy way to see what you want to do. We did Director of Football episode with Phil. We're going to do more of that. We're going to start to probably pivot over on Patreon to more of the thinking ahead stuff as that comes into focus. So we'll do a lot more scouting and Director of Football stuff. So that could be fun. If you want fun, I know football is not meant to be about fun. If it was, none of us would do this because that would be stupid. But we love you so much for being here. And we love Andrew. And because we love Andrew, we do want to wish him a happy 23rd birthday. I have to admit, he looks pretty rough for 23, but it's his birthday nonetheless. It says here it's not his birthday. It is the birthday of Arseblog.com, the Arseblog website, a website that is as much a reason I am an Arsenal supporter as anything else. Played the FIFA game with Arsenal, tried to watch the games, but being an American in the late 90s and early 2000s, other than FIFA and the occasional Champions League match, it wasn't easy. And then this blog thing came out. I was able to read about Arsenal and follow Arsenal daily. And it was such a wonderful way to feel connected. And immediately I felt like there was a space where I could become a part of this club. And it drew me to it. It made me want to blog, which I did. The less said about that, the better. It made me want to ultimately podcast, which I did. The less said about that, the better. But an inspiration for me, a way I know a lot of people who are not geographically close to the club felt close to the club. And even some people who were geographically close to the club, and seeing the way his site and his business has evolved over the years is so impressive. And I think the absolute number one leader in club-specific, club-created content, both in terms of just being known for it, but also the high level of quality that he has maintained over the years. So a true North Star for us, and a way that a lot of people have gotten closer to the club, and a man that I feel fortunate to call a dear friend. And I have to say, given his position as sort of the preeminent creator in this space, I will also say that there would have been every opportunity for Andrew to not have embraced us, or for one reason or another not have felt a kinship towards us and what we do. And instead the opposite has happened. We do our annual show at the end of the year at Union Chapel. We end the season. We've traveled together and been to games and had a blast. And just, he's a wonderful human being who creates wonderful content. We're all very fortunate that it's in our world. So didn't mean for that to go on as long as it did, but I think 23 years deserves it. So Andrew, we love you. And here with me now is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
And Paul. Hello, Paul.
Ooh, Andrew's Irish.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
I messaged him today and I said, how long have I known you? He said, we met in 98 or 99. I said, flip now. That's when I had an afro and cheekbones. He said, ditto. Not sure about the afro part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, time has gone by. It's weird because obviously
Time has ravaged us.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't look like I've aged, but the rest of you guys look like crap, man. It's depressing. I'm actually going to meet up with some disco boys in Vegas this weekend, and I'm not going to act my age. Although I may feel my age if I try not to act my age. We'll see.
And
What
the
a wonderful
disco boys are Discord element, right, Elliot? Not everybody's
No. It's people. We go to discos together and SaturdayNightFever.com is it's people from our Discord. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's get into this. Let me start with this, Clive. It feels to me now that the title is gone, and it probably was a while ago, but it does feel fully gone now. There are some people I think that are in a panic of, well, we could even drop out of the top 5, and it will be a top 5 for Champions League most likely. Can you tell me where you stand right now, just how you think about the league season, the opportunities that may still exist, the threat that may still exist, and the importance of, at a minimum, maintaining a second place finish between now and the end of May?
Yeah, I got my answer. I'm in this place where I'm in a lot of places, right, in my own mind. I'm in this place that in the short term, just around how can we score. That's the first thing. I'm not even looking at league positions or competitions. I'm just thinking, mate, we need to score, and how are we going to do it? So what solutions are we going to find? So I've got some thoughts around that. Then you've also got the thoughts of, why are we here? How have we got here? All right, so
big picture.
Well,
so there was this big bang.
I'm already lost, right? So I know about football. You don't go like that. Nothing else. All right, so basically, how have we got here? And then I think about, okay, we are here. What price are we going to pay for the fact that we are here? Right. So, is that going to be league position? Is that going to be Champions League? How far are we going there? Is it going to be the retention of our key people? Is it going to be a sort of divergence of trust and alignment between the fans, players, and the club? And that is quite a deep statement, but it's the things that worry me, right? So, because the last 2-3 years in particular, we've had total alignment until maybe this January window, when potentially every fan and every Arsenal person could see we were carrying a risk. For that risk to manifest the way it has almost completely, you don't want a situation where the fans are right and the club are going a different direction. That's not what you want, right? Because we're all dumb, right? The club is smart, right? So, and so that's where I am at the moment. So I want the price not to be too heavy, and I care about the direction of the project, the people that are in it, the players, and everyone that supports the club. I want this to continue in a unified way, but now that's at risk. So we need to knuckle in, and keep doing what we do, which is support the team, and hope that the lessons that are learned are really fixed in the summer.
It does feel like an existential summer coming as far as the Project TM. And Paul, before we get into the game specifically, how do you think about the way this might go now? Because I was thinking about this 3 seasons ago. We were playing for something until late into the season, top 4, right? When we had the trips to Spurs and Newcastle that ended it, which were, I want to say, early May. 2 seasons ago, we were really competing for the title until late April when we went to the Etihad. We had critical crunch games and we were still sort of technically kind of in it in May, but not as much after that result. Last season, we went to the final day. Here we are, February 27th, and the title is gone, and the players will know that. Whatever the manager wants to say out loud publicly, and I think he's right to not concede anything. That would be the wrong way to do it. I like what he's said about our position and what we have to do. But Champions League aside, the league itself holds very little for us. I don't think there's jeopardy of us falling out of the top 5, but you certainly want to at least keep an eye on it. What do you think this does to the psychology of a group of players that are already worn down, already threadbare, who have for 3 straight seasons had jeopardy into the very last stage of the season, now in this weird sort of interregnum, this weird liminal space where the league feels like the jeopardy is now gone? Is it freeing, or is it potentially something far worse?
I think it's a very tricky period. It's all of those things, none of those things quite. I think it's the same for the supporters.
Good point.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you're like, I almost feel like giving a kind of a message to the people out there, apart from nobody would listen to me and it would have no impact, that like it is a tricky period. Safest thing to do, like we need to talk, right? And we need to have these discussions and we need to think through where we're going. And although we only have one quadrillionth impact on the club, it is an impact. It is all connected. And people losing their minds, which I understand. That's the fuel. That's the volatility of fandom. The people watching football don't watch it because they're sane and normal and reasonable and have correctly apportioned their emotions in life, or they wouldn't spend so much bloody time watching football instead of, working, building, doing projects. So we are irrational. It is an irrational thing, but the reality is we're at where we're at. You can't do helicopter maintenance while in flight. You patch it up as the best you can as you go. The crew on the helicopter stays as calm as they can. They start to talk about things, but they don't go beating 9 bags of crap out of each other, because you still got to get there. You still got to land for the summer. And to your point earlier, there was a season, maybe it was 4 seasons ago, maybe it was 5 seasons ago, where we'd screwed it all up. We were out of everything. There were 10 games to go, and we were all saying none of these games mean anything. They did mean something. And even we who thought it didn't mean very much thought by the summer it meant something to finish strong. Now, we still have things to play for here. We are in the Champions League. And if we can somehow miraculously hang in there till our players start to get fit, we should, we have to. And so but that doesn't mean you can't talk about things. You can't critique, maybe, criticize and critique, right? We can start analytical discussions. Discussions will be had, but let's also, the emotional reactions, we'll have them, but we need to have them and move on and get back to, this is an important project. We've had a setback. Where we go from here is up to us. It's a tricky spot. Could go up, could go down, and we have some impact on that.
Yes, and it is tricky, and I think you're right to call out the supporters, because I think there is a path to this getting toxic, not just online, which is always going to amplify toxicity because of algorithms, but in the ground too, if things don't go the right way. This is why, Clive, I actually feel Champions League has reached existential levels of importance in this sense. If we get past PSV and wind up with a glamour tie against Real Madrid that goes till April 16th, that's something the whole club can get really energized about. And whatever happens in it, short of getting embarrassed, which I don't think this team would necessarily, you're talking about the season having some jeopardy and something exciting right through the middle of April. And then maybe things peter out if you don't get through that round. But if we crash out on, March 12th or 13th to a much smaller club in terms of their resources, and then have all of March and April and May to just litigate why and tear strips off each other over it, I think that could be really tricky and get into some internecine warfare kind of situation. So how do you think about that? How the team stays together in their first season in 4, not having jeopardy at this stage, and how the fans stay together to avoid what's otherwise a really bright project feeling like it's collapsing?
Yeah, and the thing is that everyone from the exterior with huge influence in the media world, social and mainstream media, are going to, quite rightly, have a dig at us because we've fallen below expectations, right? So, and then people will absorb that, and then somebody absorb information, and some people get angry with that information. They fire back at said people, or they internalize that and duplicate that message amongst Arsenal people. None of it is positive for us when we're going through this. Win 3 games and it will change, right? That's the world that we live in. So that just concerns me. But you can't expect people to stay unified all the time and not have a period of grief. And we're grieving at the moment. We're watching the football. We know we're not quite where we need to be. And everyone's forgotten a good Arsenal with good forwards. It's just forgotten. So we get labelled as functional, as set piece based. And it's this labelling that feels so short-termist. The labelling feels set to damage, and then we take that and then we run with it and then we turn on our own people. And that's the stuff that worries me. But then you got to say to yourself, that's part of the manifestation of the risk that we took, right? To leave us in a situation. If you want to, if you want to say it out loud, just say it out loud. We found ourselves in a situation where we have no forwards that can impact the top level game of football. That's where we are. And we're also a football club. This, I work in the world where we do project meetings, and after a project gets delivered, you have a lessons learned meeting. Mate, that's the meeting I want to be in with Arsenal. I promise I'll sit quietly in the corner. I promise I won't say a word. That's the meeting I want to be in, because we all learn all the time, don't we, about how we build a team, how we build a squad, and where the areas of weakness can be and how important they are. Right? So right now we focus on attack, but maybe defensive stability. I know you joked earlier on, Elliot, but that seems to be our focus, just stability. And you know how I think about football. However, with defensive stability and midfield stability, there are things you can do to duplicate midfielders. You can, like we did with Zinchenko, for example, you can do things there and get some form of midfield in place. What you can't do is make do with attackers. There's special genes, special talents, special athleticism. They are the difference makers. They are the point of difference. And we don't have those attackers at the level of football that we're playing in. And that's a worry, because now I'm looking at, I've got some ideas about what we can do strategically and tactically, but we need to have a real reset around this. And going forward, I do think we need a level of renewal in the squad. It's obvious the players that are going. And so this phase where we are at the moment, I think is a critical phase. But I want to embrace it. I want to embrace the potential of layering on this strong base and stepping forward, not looking down and backwards. There's an opportunity here in trauma if we really seize it. If we just try to layer over and cut and paste what we've always done, then I'm sorry, I'm not sure that's going to work anymore. I really don't. We need to move forward with real aggression and ambition and intent. Then people will say, you know what? Sometimes it happens. And but we learn, and look at us now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the worst things about the injury crisis, and to that respect, Clive, to the lessons learned question, because the lessons learned question is the most important question the club's going to take away from this. In any science experiment, you want to have a control, right? So you can evaluate what's making the impact, whether there's an impact, right? Whether the results are as you'd expect. The problem with the injury crisis is it prevents us from having a controlled experiment. Are Mikel's tactics too defensive? Are the signings the right signings? Do we lack offensive threat? All that, we don't attack in the right way. When you have Mikel Merino up front and Raheem Sterling is your only way to change it off the bench, right? And you're playing backups at every position and 17-year-olds are having to start game in, game out despite cramping at 45 minutes, it becomes impossible to test your hypothesis. Maybe Mikel's tactics are too defensive. Maybe our shape doesn't create enough offensive threat. Maybe we don't have enough offensive threat in the group that we've developed, and Kai isn't the right striker. Clive, how do you arrive at any sensible read of that situation when so many variables have been introduced into the equation?
Yeah, really well said, Elliot. And two things can be true, right? So, but I have to remember, I
that's
think
my
it's
line.
February. I stole it. Hey, February the 2nd. I think it was February the 2nd. We played Man City. And we stuck 5 open play goals past them and gave me the highlight of the season, right? And many others. This conversation wasn't coming up, mate. It wasn't coming up. And I'm not a goldfish. I remember when we attacked really, really well. I've got a memory. But it still doesn't mean we can't evolve. It still doesn't mean that we didn't really evolve enough, in my opinion, from 2024 onwards. And we took a decision to maybe protect our floor and consolidate and hope that people will continue to progress and develop, and our pattern was set and we'll be okay. And I felt it too. So I was there. We can make this work. I misread the summer tournament impact. I misread the 2 extra Champions League games. I misread the 2 League Cup games. I misread Manchester United in the 3rd round FA Cup. Didn't need that. I misread the fact that we had a much stronger schedule with the Champions League format changes. I misread it. Didn't see this coming. and we paid the maximum price, right? So, like I said earlier, as long as we learn, I'm all right. But we must learn, and hopefully this thing will not be derailed because of a year when things have gone against us and where we haven't quite pushed on in the same way which many of us would have hoped we would have.
Yeah, and look, it's easy to be wise after that because I'll give you just the perfect example of that, right? Raheem Sterling. No one thinks Raheem Sterling is the guy we should have signed last summer, the guy we wanted to sign last summer. But I don't think it was outrageous to look at a loan for Raheem Sterling and think, this guy could give us a productive season. All right, he was 29 when we loaned him. He was coming off a season, people think, oh, he's totally washed, right? He's coming off a season for a bad Chelsea where in 1,900 minutes, he had 8 goals and 4 assists and 0.5 XG plus XA per 90 and 2.3 shots per 90. Those are the metrics of a player that if you took the name off and you said, we're going to loan a 29-year-old player with those metrics in the Premier League last season because we couldn't get our first choice, I'd say that player could come in and help us. That player could really come in and help us. Look at the dribble numbers. Look at the shot numbers. Look at the underlying metrics. 8 goals, 4 assists last season. What did it turn out to be? It turned out there was nothing left in the tank for Raheem Sterling at all whatsoever. That's hurt us. That wound up being a bad choice, but I don't think it was ridiculous to think it could have worked. So I think there are some things that just we rolled snake eyes. There are some things we obviously did wrong in terms of not getting the things we needed. The injuries just obfuscate the analysis. And the thing about this, Paul, first of all, there's this narrative, right? Like we are always compared against Liverpool because we know what City is, but Liverpool feels sort of organic in the way we think of ourselves as organic. And so we wind up getting measured against them. And there's this perception that what Liverpool did is they built a team to go head to head with City and they just went head to head with them every season. Can I give you their league finishes? This is going to surprise you. These are league finishes starting in the 16-17 season. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
4th, 17-18, 4th, 18-19, 2nd, 19-20, 1st, 20-21, 3rd, 21-22, 2nd, 22-23, 5th, 23-24, 3rd. So in this time when they've been going head to head with City, they have a 1st and 2 seconds. But in the middle there, they dropped to 4th once, they dropped to 3rd once, they dropped to 5th once, they dropped to 3rd again. So the fact is, and you've called this out a lot, Paul, there just isn't linear progression despite the fact we want to think it's linear. And if we are able to hit 80 points, I don't know if we can. It'll be the first time in our history we've ever done 80 points 3 seasons in a row. And we'll have potentially finished second 3 seasons in a row. So we are maintaining a very high floor. But as Clive called out on the instant reaction last night, the next step is to figure out how to raise our ceiling, right? We are doing this in the hardest Premier League, right? The hardest league, but it's not enough. So for you, as a last point on this, we'll get into the game, the lineup, the changes, and we'll look at the CL and we'll look at the sporting director stuff. But do you find that there's any clarity for you in how we arrived here, or any ability to diagnose things clearly, given the number of sort of circumstances that are all operating against each other at the same time?
Well, I think you framed it perfectly. Looking at this season, it's very clear this is not our season, right? It's just that we weren't good enough that the things that were outside of our control, we could go through untouched, unblemished. I mean, it's too much for us. If we could have won the league this year, potentially, if things had lined up as they did last year. And you look at last year and say, man, things went very well for us last year. This year, things have not. If you were to put 4 or 5 buckets together of, one of the biggest ones being injuries, one of them being kind of key refereeing decisions and vagaries, and then, then the other things are your moves in the market, the manager, the strength of it. Like 2-3 of the buckets have a big hole in it, and there's only so much you can do. To your question here, where are we at right now? Like, I like your framing of Liverpool and where they've been. You don't have to come in near second every season. What you need to do is to have a strong season every couple of years. And there's almost a cadence. If you look at the stock market, right, it doesn't have 4 great years. There's liquidity cycles. There are cycles all the time. There is a season. So this is our down cycle. We can't we have to not lose our. I have two messages for myself when I think about it. We got to not lose our shit, not throw out the baby with the bathwater, and it's a beautiful baby that's growing, getting stronger. And then the other side of it is we've got to be obsessive about putting out a team that frightens the opposition in the attack, the midfield, and the defense. And we can frighten the opposition with our defense at the moment. We can almost frighten the opposition with our midfield, with Martin Odegaard in form, which he isn't at the moment, Declan Rice, and a complementary player that makes those three tick, which maybe it's Zubamendi. And then you look at our attack, and I just see that we're a ways off from putting out an attack that's going to scare a competition, even with our fully fit players, in the same way that a Real Madrid, a Liverpool, and when they get their act back together, Manchester City scare a team when they come to town. And until we can put out a starting three that scares the opposition across all three positions, and in some games that might be Kai Havertz, but in other games it won't be Kai Havertz. So it doesn't have to be three guys. It has to be a way of putting out 5 or so players in some kind of combination that terrifies the opposition across 3 spots. And right now, if Mo Salah, Diogo Jota, and Luis Diaz rock up at your place right now, you're crapping your pants with McAllister and Szoboszlai hitting form, and they got their and Trent. You just crap in your pants. You're in there with your whiteboard doing all sorts of
diagrams,
computations as to how to neutralize their threats. And there's Nuno saying, yeah, we didn't go with the back three because, Arsenal. He said they don't have a striker. But what he really meant was we didn't scare them in the slightest. Our most dangerous, our most threatening attacker for them was going to be Ethan Nwaneri, and they just neutralized that by putting too many players. It's like they just took away all our threat. And that's bad.
And for people who don't know what Paul's referencing, it's not the first time I'm sure. No, okay. For people who don't know what Paul's referencing, Nuno was interviewed after the game, and basically they asked him why he didn't play a back five. He said we didn't need the extra body because Arsenal had nobody up there. They had nobody up front.
Didn't play a striker.
Yeah, didn't play a striker. Which I'm sure we'd love to play a striker if we had one. I think as a final point about this, I want to be clear. I think it's entirely fair to critique things Mikel Arteta has done this season, both as a coach and a manager. It's not like he's not perfect. It's not like he has a CV before Arsenal that shields him from doubt. I do struggle with some of the intensity of the antipathy towards him in some circles. And I don't know if that's just being too online or not, or being too caught up in things like the overlap, which are designed to generate that kind of rage bait. In my view, we're in the best period this club has experienced since 2004, with one of the most exciting squads we've compiled since 2004. I definitely think the attack has been an issue, even when it was good last season. 5 times with nil this season, 9 times with nil. That's a problem. And it's a problem Mikel Arteta has to show he can solve. Mikel Arteta has to show that he can build the same level of elite attack that he's built in defense. And that is hard to do. But I think having those doubts and that those questions are fair. Some of the intensity of the antipathy I see, I can't connect to. So Clive, as a final point on this, before we get into some of the specifics of the game, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, for me, it's just about developing our attack, shall we say, and evolving it. And it's been a discussion for many of us in different ways and different guises. I quite like our attacking from wide areas as long as people are on form. And for me, my issue is he has a style of play, but for me, it's not the style of play. It's not underpinning the first 3 guys that provide that style of play with a similar level of talent or similar profiles, right? So if you have a centre forward in Kai Havertz, we know what he is. He's a taller centre forward that you can rotate around. If your second centre forward is a wing forward, who we're not sure if he's a winger or a 9, then you have to change style, right? So if you have a key player in Saka that plays out wide, I know we've found a little bit of Ethan right now, but you have to underpin people that can run and stretch the team to allow other people to flourish, right? So now Martin Odegaard's not flourishing because he's got no runners. You have to underpin your style. And I think, I find it quite interesting that in the summer, and by the way, I was fine behind the summer, so this is not after time and stuff. I was fine with it. I thought we'll be okay. And but I find it interesting the priorities by which we look at a squad. And we've ended up with an imbalance in the squad. And it comes back to overburdening our offensive players, and we've done it for a while. We have, haven't we? We've done it for a while. We've been caught out this time. And it's back to that again. So for me, I think there's a discussion, Elliot, around positional play and positional play coaches. There are three prominent ones at Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal at the moment, although everyone does it up to a certain degree. And at the moment, Chelsea and Arsenal are falling a little bit, and so Man City also. And there's a discussion about attacking style versus something a little bit more chaotic and relational versus a positional style of things. I like positional football. I understand it. I understand why it happens. But the top end of the pitch, you need individualism to make. Once you get to the position, it needs to matter. And I think we don't have enough individualism to really make it work. So when you have your style, then you have to really invest in your style. At the moment, we haven't done the top part of the pitch. And we need to do it. We need to do it because we're starting to look and we're starting to feel. We have to be honest. We're adults, right? Got to be honest. Without our star men, we're starting to look boring. Right? That's the truth. I hate saying those words. This is my club, but I felt sick as I just said that. We're starting to look boring. We're starting to look the same.
Back to our roots, Clive.
Yeah.
Back to George Graham. Let's go.
But there's been a couple of moments in the last couple of weeks that have really given me hope. And obviously Ethan's explosion at Leicester was just like, oh my God, potential there's huge, right? But there was a moment in the game against Forest when Calafiori got that ball in a position where he shouldn't be, turned and hit the post. And I thought to myself, bingo. We need more unstructured play in forward areas that leaves us with memories, right? And we have to do that. So we need to provide a platform for that and encourage that. And I think the evolution of Arteta's mindset around attack, I'm really looking at. I think it's one of the biggest risk factors to his longevity. Evolving the attack, maintaining relationships. These are the two things I think about, right? And I think the two are linked. If you don't evolve the attack, you don't involve the team in the right way, relationships are at risk within. That's my view. I really feel that because there are people out there after him, and all he's done is try to compete and get better. That's all he's done, and I don't understand it. The hatred towards him from the media, I don't understand it. All he's done is try to improve our team, which he's done year on year over the last 3 to 4 years. Until this year, we've hit a plateau. Let's learn from it. Let's go again. Let's not turn on each other and blow up this project by ourselves. Us do it. If we're not good enough, let that happen. But I think we can be good enough. We just need to stay with it.
There are times when you play perfect football right through the opposition and you score a beautiful goal, but that's not how most goals are scored. It isn't. And I think the thing we maybe have forgotten, because we've been coached very well, because we've had a good structure, is football is won by talent. Talent. What Mohamed Salah does when the ball is at his feet, the way Trent Alexander-Arnold delivers a ball so it has to be scored, the way Kevin De Bruyne would split a defense to Erling Haaland, who could run powerfully like nobody else and score off platform from angles, the way Isak can use his body and his balance and his control and the way he curls a ball to score a goal brilliantly, the way Bukayo Saka can undress a defender from all angles and put it in the far post or lay the ball onto a teammate in the perfect spot. That's how you score goals. Individual brilliance. And I think we've lost all that. Tottenham Hotspur, it gives me no pleasure to say, we're good for a few years there because Harry Kane just scored lots of great goals and provided lots of great assists because he's one of the best players in the Premier League. And when Arsenal were invincible, the tactics were probably pretty good, but you know what I remember? I remember Robert Pires scoring unbelievable goals. I remember Thierry Henry being an unstoppable force of nature, right? That you remember those kind of things. And so it should come as no surprise when a fading Leo Trossard and a non-attacker Mikel Merino and a 17-year-old winger and an out-of-form 8 and a guy who started his career at center back are your front 5, and all of a sudden it's hard to score goals. It is a talent issue. Some of that talent is out injured, and some of that talent has not been recruited. Let's be clear. We have not recruited enough elite attacking talent. To score goals, you need dribblers, you need pace, you need shooters. We have a dribbler in Saka and maybe in Nwaneri. We have pace in Martinelli. We don't have a shooter. Maybe Nwaneri is that, to be honest. But Odegaard has lost that. Right? City won the league last season with pace and power in behind in Holland, with shooting from Foden, with dribbling from Doku. Right? We lack these profiles, and we need to find them in the market, or we're going to continue to be discussing this even when we're fully fit. That's my opinion. We'll see if it plays out. Like I said, a lot of conclusions that are going to be tested when we're back to full fitness that are hard to evaluate right now because we're so depleted. But we're going to have to solve the problem for PSV. Let's not do a big section on the Forest game because it's not a classic. But Paul, quickly on the lineup, I don't have a problem with it. I thought he might try to protect Calafiori from the pace on the wings, and you could see that was a challenge for him by playing Timber on the left and White on the right. White obviously not fit enough. Probably not close to fit enough to start, given that he didn't even come on at halftime, and Tierney did. But any thoughts of him going with Marino up front again in the lineup he picked?
I guess it's the bed he's made that we're lying in currently. To back off it is like, it automatically kind of pulls in Sterling, and I don't think that's how he wants to line up at the moment. So this is where we're at. He's got no choices. And the problem, he's got two problems now, which is this attack doesn't really work, and everybody knows what's coming. So everybody we play knows how to neutralize it, which is just make sure Ethan and Odegaard on that side of the pitch can't create anything, and you'll probably see it out. And yeah, I guess the interesting pick was Jorginho over Partey. I mean, why not, I guess? Maybe there was some unpicking of a five-man defense, but they didn't have a five-man defense. They didn't feel they needed one.
They were right.
And, maybe you got to rotate a little bit and give everybody a bit of a look from time to time. But, I mean, you look at the bench, there's no real options. You're attacking subs, Ben White and Thomas Partey, basically like for like, even if we kept Timber on for a little while or whatever. So he got no choices, no options, and the biggest problem with that is the opposition knows exactly what you're going to do, and the team itself starts not believing that the run will be made, the pass will be received. Yeah. Before we get into the game, I thought in many ways it was a fairly good performance, especially when you contrast, that mightn't be popular to say, but we didn't, the final end product, which is what it's all about, was not really there. There was enough there. We had enough XG. If we'd done a couple more things a little bit better, we'd have had even more XG. We had 3-4 situations where you felt, might be a goal here, should be a goal here, but we don't have any finishers. So, I actually think the team itself did well. The missing piece, relatively well, fairly well, considering the situation. I mean, Forest are very good. They were at home. The crowd was rocking. It was midweek. They had a lot in their favor. I think we put together fairly good performance, apart from that whole thing called the final third in the attack.
So that's the thing. And Clive, you touched on this in the instant reaction. So we don't necessarily need to say the same thing over again for a different audience, but I think it's worth pointing out. This game was at least reassuring versus the West Ham game in that I saw a lot of the things that we need to be good at being good at, right? We played well in a lot of phases of the game here, I thought. We dominated them. But again, once we arrived in the final third, whether we're arriving there too static or whether we're arriving there in the wrong areas or whether we just don't have the players to solve the problem in the final third, that piece was missing. But do you want to just quickly, just so that this whole thing isn't a funeral dirge, maybe tell me some of the things about this performance that encouraged you versus the West Ham game? Because I do think we were better. I mean, the XG was 1 to 0.4. That you don't want to have that be your XG most games, but we did control this game in a lot of key phases of play that I thought were pretty decent.
Yeah, so the West Ham game was disturbing, Elliot. I got to be honest with you. It was not good. It's a pretty low journey home, a long journey home. I was on a train with some people who listened to a podcast, and they cheered me up when we were watching the rugby, and it was like, oh, thank goodness for meeting nice people who were suffering like we all suffer, right? So, but I was concerned because we didn't compete in the right way. You know, we've had flat days before, but we were sort of, I don't like, you know what I'm like. I don't like when we get out physical and another team, wants it a little bit more. And that sounds a little bit Roy Keane. You got to want it. But, it doesn't take talent to do the stuff like that. Just work hard and compete. It doesn't take super talent. We're missing talent. But, there's a phrase, be world class at things that doesn't take much talent. That's just competing, right? And so this game, I was worried. Forest are quite sharp. We struggle with them anyway when we're at full strength. And so I'm thinking, I saw your message in the WhatsApp. We're going to lose. I think that's all we need. Thanks for the pep talk. So we didn't. And like you set the scene for me. We look quite competitive, and Paul's right. That we look like our team again when it comes to our standards and the things that we do around controlling a game, dominating a game, putting people under pressure to make sure their exit passes are not good, then having ways of attack. And we shut up a very vociferous crowd with our play and control the game. But of course, we didn't have the final thing. Needed a bit of luck, maybe, from the Calafiori shot and a couple of set-piece moments and some better execution around the edge of the area and decisions. But I sort of liked it. I was reassured. Maybe not reassured for this particular game and for the league, but reassured that when we play PSV in a few days' time, we're going to get a level of performance. And I do think the team were really serious and they really reacted well to a manager that was obviously fuming about West Ham's performance. And so that encouraged me. It's just about the next thing. Because we love talking about players, don't we? Who should play? Well, Martinelli should play, or Trossard should play, and Jesus should maybe play on the left. Well, mate, I tell you now, we can't have these discussions. Just think about the times on his podcast that we were protecting Kai Havertz, his reputation. Mate, if he could walk in a straight line now, we'd all be celebrating, wouldn't we? Do you know what I mean? It's just really, it's just where we are, right? So there was some encouraging performances, and particularly in the fullback areas, I thought were very interesting in these areas. I think that is a development for the team.
Do you wish he had left Calafiori on at halftime and just rode his luck? I mean, I know we've had no luck with red cards, so he said he took him off because we can't afford to play with 10 men again. But do you wish he had ridden his luck? Because Calafiori was clearly providing a spark.
Yeah, so Calafiori needs to get tighter quicker. Stop having people turn around on you. Because that's not your strength. Don't let them turn around. When they receive the ball, all they can see is you looming over them like a wardrobe. That's his coaching message, right? Simple as that. Never get people to turn around. If they turn around you take them early. So it's not a run. If you take them on the run, it's a booking. If you take them early, it's a foul. And you jog back in. Right? So but when it comes to his attack playing where he popped up and his overall talent, I thought he was excellent. I thought he showed me things I hadn't seen from an Arsenal fullback, and the positions he took up was just brilliant. And his courage and personality were really, really good. He nearly gave away a penalty, and he could have given away a penalty and got sent off. And this conversation would not be good, would it? It would not be good. We'd be talking about, did we need to spend on that player in the summer? Did we really need it? Blah blah blah. Because now we can all see Miles's ascension, so we're asking questions, right? But I really liked what he did. And I've got to be honest with you, in this short term, that's what I think we need to do. We need to set our fullbacks free, double pivot it, set our fullbacks free, and stop having your best striker of the ball standing in the crowd, first row of the crowd. I know that's not going to work. It's not going to work, Stretch the pitch using other players, So I did like what Calafiori did. I think he's got a real future, but you have to remember how young he is, and it's his first season, etc. But I like what he could potentially offer this team, and I want to see much more freedom from other players because I'm not too surprised by what I'm going to see anymore. But he surprised me yesterday in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, there were times he was popping up in the center forward position. He was allowed to roam, and we've seen the left back be given those options at times. Tomiyasu, I remember Billy Carpenter in an article, I think called him Romiyasu at one point, right, where we would give him the freedom to do something similar. Paul, before we have to let you go, because I know you are up against a stop here, do you have thoughts on maybe Calafiori or a couple of interesting performances you just want to highlight?
Well, so it's clear the challenge for Calafiori is if he wants to be on the pitch, he's got to learn that whole fullback 1v1 defending thing. And it, that's to my eye, that's a worry. I hear what Clive's saying, but it does seem like a big gap between what you need to be secure. Like there's one, as we go into this Champions League home and away, the one area of the pitch you want to have secure is your back line. We have, one of the best defenses in the Champions League in the world. And while I agree with Clive, what we need is Calafiori tearing through midfield, getting into great attacking positions, destabilizing the other team. Would be nice if we'd one area of the pitch we felt some level of confidence at base, and that's the defensive line. So that's probably the biggest call Mikel Arteta has to make over these two legs, what to do about left back. Because he could put in Miles Lewis-Skelly and basically there's a very good chance. He's a young guy and he might make a mistake, but outside of the mistake he might make, you're going to have a top-level defensive unit with that back four, with David Raya, and with, if you have Declan Rice there, or even Thomas Partey is at least at the level now where very capable coverage and a progressive passing. That's a pretty good back six to rival basically anybody in the Champions League. And to give that up cheaply, well, it's not cheaply, but to make that choice and say, you know what, we can risk it at left back. I think we saw against Bayern. I think we'll see against Real Madrid. I think we'll see, if we get that far, I think we'll see it in every tie we have against PSV. They're going to know where to try and hurt us, and that'll be down that side. And I don't think we make up for it in the other areas of the pitch. So I'd be inclined. You can get a long way in the Champions League by being conservative.
Yes.
I would be inclined for now, personally, to give Arteta complete latitude to have a conservative approach, even against PSV, that says one half of the pitch we got locked down. Now we just need to work out how to hurt them in the other half of the pitch. And rely on a little, the ball bouncing around in the box. How about our defense is better than theirs? I don't think you gave us enough credit in this Nottingham Forest game, Elliot. We don't just get credit for our clean sheet; we get credit for their clean sheet, right? Two clean sheets.
We kept clean sheets at both ends.
It was all about us.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. So
well
let's
said.
keep our sheet clean and then have the ball bouncing around even more in their area, and know that's where we need to impact things. We've only one area of the pitch that we're absolutely top level at, our defense. Could we play Calafiori in midfield? I think Clive suggested that one stage. Like, maybe you don't start him, but you bring him on 60 minutes, or you bring him on as an attacking option from fullback because the game calls for it. I think I'd start conservative, reassure our level of control, and play all the jokers you like up front to move it around. I don't mean that in a...
No, I hear you. I think we're going to have to lean on our defensive solidity in a knockout tournament to have any chance to get through. The only thing I would say to you is try not to let your mind wander to who you would pick as our penalty takers if it goes to penalties. All right, we're going to let Paul go. We're going to talk on the pitch. We're going to talk about the eights. We're going to talk about Waneri. Then we're going to talk PSV briefly and the sporting director stuff. We're going to do all that in 24 minutes. So that is your pod that is coming up, but we will say goodbye to Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Woohoo!
Paul's going to go on mute and turn his camera off. And I am going to engage in what can only be described as legendary commerce. Legendary e-commerce. So here we go. First and foremost, I am going to tell you about Shopify. Look, if you want to build an e-commerce site, all kidding aside, it's really this simple. If you want to sell something online, if you want to have a business online, and you want to be able to make that business look as professional as it needs to look so that people will shop with you. Shopify does that without you having to know how to code, without you having to know how to write any line of code or how to operate any advanced technology. You can drag and drop images in, type up the name of the products you want to sell, say what you want to price them at. It'll figure out shipping and taxation and how to get it on the Instagram store and how to get it on the Facebook store. And it'll help you with cart abandonment. So if someone leaves something in their cart and you want it to say to them, hey, you left something in your cart, do you want to come back and shop? It'll do all that. Huge Fortune 500 companies power their e-commerce with Shopify, and you can power it in the same way without having to know all the complex side of web engineering. You just have to know what products you want to sell, and Shopify does the rest. So if established in 2025 has a nice ring to it for you, sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase, shopify.com/ArsenalVision to start selling with Shopify today. That's shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And this podcast is an advertisement from BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't online therapy. It's therapy that just happens to be online. I've said it a million times. I will say it again. Every single person should engage in therapy at some point in their life. Maybe it's for relationships. I think relationships are great when they work flawlessly, and relationships can be a problem when they're not working well. And I think the key with relationships is to work on yourself so that you understand how to arrive into that relationship. Or as Clive says, you never arrive. But when you arrive in the relationship, you arrive in the right way. We hear about red flags to avoid in relationships. But what about green flags in friends and partners, right? The green flags that help you identify the things that connect with you well, that allow you to thrive in a relationship. So you recognize those things. That's an example of how you could use therapy, right? You're going to talk to a therapist about the green flags, about the things that bring you happiness that you can contribute so you have more fulfilling relationships. Just an example. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise in mental health. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/Vision. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Vision. And this podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN. Look, here's what you do. You get the app, you put it on your device, you click where you're going to browse, and you can watch the geo-locked videos. You can watch your Premier League games that aren't broadcast in a certain area at 3 p.m. You can watch them back in another area, right? So if you VPN into another region, sign up for a free account. When I want to watch match review of the day, I sign up for free in another region, watch in that other region, see all the terrible punditry, decide never to do it ever again. There you go. It's that simple. Streaming services. Some streaming services cost less money or allow episodes to come out sooner in another region. You can browse over there, and it has threat protection, works on all your devices. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. It's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Finally, Indeed. Indeed is the hiring partner, okay? You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Just use Indeed. Okay? You can stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites because Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference because according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have a 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs, right? So I think that is something that you definitely want to consider, okay? Couple of things. One of the things I love about Indeed is that you don't have to bounce around from website to website to website. So, there have been times when I have been looking for people to help out with the pod and needed a job. And there are all these different websites that you can post to, and then you have to monitor them all, or you can just post them on Indeed, and then you find all the candidates, they match you better, and you've saved yourself a lot of time and you get the hiring done faster. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed, and listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring. Indeed is all you need, Clark. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Got it. Whew, that was a lot, but we got through it. Clive, real quick. For the final time ever, please explain to me why I should shut up about eights. I I watch us play and I see Declan Rice and he's doing Declan Rice stuff and he's such a good player and he could probably be good at all 11 positions on the pitch. But there is a little part of me that says, Mikel, you got this space-eating unicorn midfielder who can carry and disrupt and tackle from all angles and has an Energizer bunny engine. Just give him the keys to central midfield and play two technical eights. Play Ethan and Odegaard together. Try something that sparks that central creativity, that allows us to arrive into the final third with a little bit more technique and dynamism and box awareness. But no, that's not what we do. And tell me why it's totally fine and I'm an idiot.
That's Disneyland football. What's wrong with you? Right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I want to go to Disneyland. Happiest place on earth if you can afford it, which, let's be honest, nobody can.
yeah, I suppose some games we may suit a double pivot. Some games we may suit a single ball playing pivot. Some games we may suit a defensive single pivot, right? So the good thing is that he can do all the jobs, right? So do you want him spacey in front of our two immaculate centre backs, or do you want him nicking the ball high up in the pitch, two passes we have a shot on goal? It's a choice depending on the opposition and what they do and how they want to play. If the opposition go long, then maybe you want him a little bit deeper, getting the second ball. If the opposition want to play out from the back, we want him there, sniffing things out, winning it early, and going into disorganized defenses while they're not settled. Right? So, and we've seen him do all of the jobs. If you close your eyes and you put people in a 4-3-3 formation and you want profiles of players, you want a different profile of 8 for that moment at the edge of the box. That's what you're really saying. You want someone who's a right-footed Odegaard, I'm just using that as an example, who can do something that I can't see from my city and produce something that we need. I can't say you're wrong. I want that too. We all want that, right? Yeah. But then when the other team's going through us, because we've got no way of getting to them, then we want something else, right? I suppose the real thing is we want the options of that. And we don't have that today. We don't have the option of that 8 in our squad, right?
Can I just stop you for a second though and say, like, when I look at Conte, who was Ballon d'Or level, right, at central midfield, what Conte did is it was like having two central midfielders in one. He could cover all the ground and clean up so much for you that you could play a certain way in the final third without exposing yourself. And I think, I'm not going to say Declan Rice is N'Golo Kante at this point. I mean, N'Golo Kante was unique in the world, but I think he has some of the characteristics of someone who can, given the opportunity, free you up to be less restricted in what you try to do from an attacking standpoint because of his unique qualities.
Yeah, so in your mind, we've already got the ball up there, and so it's already there, right? So but how's it going to get there? How's it going to get there?
Come on. Have you ever seen the meme where it's like, it shows the defensive players and it's like tackle, intercept, grr, and then it shows the other side and it shows like attackers like shoot, score, yay, and then in the middle it's just wavy lines that say ball magically moves between this area or whatever.
Exactly. How's it going to get there? We circulate the ball sometimes. We go backwards and around to go forward. Sometimes we flow through. Right, and Declan can do a lot of these things, but he can't do what Zubimendi can do with how he receives it, back foot, either foot, can pass either foot with different shapes on his foot. He can't do what Thomas Partey does, regarding how he manipulates the ball and steps away from people and he's brave and can see around corners. But they can't do what that Rice can do regarding tracking, covering, pressing. He's got an unbelievable switch of pass on him. I want the options, Elliot. I want the options so we can discuss it. At this moment in time, I know Phil did a podcast on Sevilla Naipan. I really like that player. I like the idea of that player. And for me, he'd be an 8 to discuss with a right foot flowing in, right? I'm not sure if we're going to go for it, but when I saw that, I got excited. I thought, that sounds interesting. That's a development. That's an option. That's what we want. We want to have options on every given day. We've got 5 substitutes. We need options. At the moment, we're a little bit. We got some Timberlands in that midfield on occasions, didn't we? Have we got one too many of those players? Maybe we're saying that now because we're a little bit light in attack. So I do think there's room for that on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side now, rather than me think about the type of player, I think what we've become without realizing it is we're lacking dynamism. We're lacking agility and dynamism at the moment because we've lost it up front, right? So and so now we're looking at midfield and they don't have it, and so that's something we found ourselves short of. It's very difficult, Elliot, we stood next to each other in Lisbon. We weren't having this conversation. It was perfection. It literally was, wasn't it? It was perfection.
Yeah.
We just beat Man City 5 without Saka. And so there's a lot in the group. We mustn't forget, but if we're talking about evolution, there is room for this. But I do think there's a fundamental below just picking players to stand in positions. I think there needs to be a little bit of unstructured play and freedom in the top end of the pitch. I think not because I want to see something that makes people think I don't know what's coming. Do you know what I mean? And at the moment, they sort of know what's coming and they know the players as well. And this comes back to my evolution point. I think it's time to see things like Ethan popping up on the left-hand side. I like that.
He had a great moment from the left where he dropped his shoulder, turned, and just didn't quite get the shot up. But I thought that was brilliant from him. Beautiful cameo there.
How you keep people enthused in their jobs is you give them new responsibilities. You allow them more creative license. And I think when we get back to full strength, I'd like to see us evolve to a little bit of that because we do have the base which we've invested in. We have the rest defense automatically in our minds. We can recover. We need to be more free in our thinking, and really invest in our talent to do that. And Paul said something earlier about fear factor, or, I'm summarizing. And he's right. People, I think Trossard's a decent player, but people are not scared of him. They don't adjust for him. They adjust for Saka. They might even adjust for Havertz on occasions.
Or for Martinelli's pace. There's certain things
when he's on it, we know our front three are decent. We need more than that. You can't roll them out 60 games a season. You just can't, right?
Then let me ask you this, because this is the last point I want to make about this game. Well, there's one more. Are you worried about Odegaard? Because he is a player who his own unique skill set, when he's at the top of his game, can take teams out of what they want to do with his ability to operate in tight spaces or see angles that others don't. I don't think he was terrible in this game. I certainly think there's hyperbole around how he's being discussed, but I think it's also fair to say he's miles off his best. Are you sort of prepared to just say something's up this season and we need to wait and see on him, and there's really not much more we can add to the discourse?
Yeah, something is up. He's a player that needs runners for definitely, and he's lost his runners. I think with Odegaard, he's definitely lost a little bit of power. I think he suddenly looks limited where I felt he was limitless. That's where I felt he was. So he's lost a little bit of power. But I also, again, I'm not a goldfish memory. I can think a little bit further back. Do you remember the Chelsea game when he first came back from injury?
Yeah, he was brilliant.
First game back.
I don't know. He came back like a house on fire and then he was gone.
And we were struggling, weren't we? We were struggling at that time. He came back in. I think we may have lost a game just before that. He came back in. And basically, I don't think we lost a league game until West Ham, since he's come back in. And I remember looking at him and I remember thinking, mate, you run this team. The press looked different. Everything looked different. The players were following him. I thought, wow, that was only a little while ago. But then he dipped down again post his injury. And that injury has really, really hurt his season. We've lost him for a bit. It happens. City have lost Foden for a bit. Right? So sometimes you just lose players for a period. But I'm not going to lose faith in him because I remember how I felt when he came back in that Chelsea game. I remember what he does for the group. We just got to stay with until he comes back, because he's a really top player that can run football matches. I just feel for him to be him, the way he receives and manipulates the ball and then passes it on time to running targets, that last bit, running targets, is not in the conversation. We ended up with a team of facilitators, Elliot, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I would say it like this. I think a player can either hurt a team, actively hurt a team, right? That can happen. A player can contribute to a team, and then certain players can elevate a team.
Yeah.
And I think Martin Odegaard is not hurting us. Anyone saying that, I think, is just wildly off base. He is contributing. I think what's frustrating is we think he can be an elevator, and I don't think he's elevating us right now in the way that I think is capable. So we'll return to that. Obviously, as it progresses. I want to do two things quickly, and we don't need to go too deep on either of these things. But look, the subs in this game were, to me, the first time I've seen Mikel guessing rather than knowing. This seemed like
trying new things, right?
Yeah, just throwing the kitchen sink at it. I joked on the instant reaction. It reminds me of like when the Coyote used to get the Acme box full of crap to try to catch the Roadrunner, and it would all blow up in his face. He tried things, and that's credit to him, but I don't think he found anything. So that leads me to this question. Given that I don't think he found anything, I mean, I think Ethan was our best player, but he said he was cramping up by 45 minutes. What do you think he does against PSV? Is it a case of we keep it tight away, and this is the nastiest mid-block Arsenal you've ever seen in your life for 90 minutes, taking a 0-0 home to the Emirates?
Yeah, just focus on our fundamentals, right? Focus on controlling the game. Focus on controlling where we play, right? And keep going, right? Just keep going. Keep being free in attack. Keep showing for the ball, and keep trusting your details that it will turn. We needed a break last night at Calafiori shot, didn't we? We just needed a break. It was almost that goes in. We're looking at performance slightly differently. I thought we really nullified Forest. We've beaten them 2-0 last season, I think. I think we played as well as we played better last night, potentially from a control aspect.
I watched Salah score a deflected goal against City, and I watch it, and it's like, I don't want to sound like a whiner. It's just like, we need a break. We need something to just go off someone's ass and fly into the net. You know what I mean?
Mate, at the moment, every single match I watch, I look at the other team's forwards, and they all look better than ours. I was watching Spurs and Johnson flying down the wing and Kulusevski flying in there. I'm not a Spurs fan, but I'm thinking, we could do with Johnson right now. Everybody's
Clive, we'd take Wood, Cho, or Elanga right now. Elanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood, the front three at Nottingham Forest. Bring them on. We take them all.
Callum Hudson-Odoi, a player that was a real star when he was young, ruptured his Achilles, should have gone to Bayern Munich, ruptured his Achilles, lost his career at Chelsea, but he's back now. I thought he was really interesting in that game. I thought we did well against him, but I thought he not only did he work forward well, he worked back well. And it's watching football now when we are strikerless. I'm really sort of looking around and appreciating other players and what they're doing, and I'm appreciating them differently. I'm looking at the boy at Bournemouth, Semenyo. I'm thinking, you look good, mate. You look really good. And it's going to be so interesting to see how we develop this group, because we need to. We need some imposing talent that really devastates. And I really want to see what we do next. I'm really enthused, but we need to do it, Elliot. This ain't no time for any Carlos kickaballs coming in, mate. We need some top players who we all know and we all respect and the other team respects.
Well, that leads into a great final conversation about director of football. The last thing I'll say, by the way, though, is I thought Gabriel and Saliba were excellent in this game, which is a great sign because we'll need them in the Champions League, and they look back to top form. So that is really encouraging. We'll have more on the PSG game on Monday, and we might do so tomorrow. Like I said, I'm flying out to Vegas to meet some Discord members, so I'm excited about that. So there may be a Patreon pod in the morning on finances or the director of football. I've got a couple of special guests that I've reached out to. Just depends if the scheduling works out. But as a last point on that, there's some reporting out now from David Ornstein, Clive, that we expect to have a director of football in by March. And the candidates are named, and it's Dan Ashworth, it's Jason Ato, it's Roberto Olabe, it's Andrea Berta, and Thiago Scuro. We've broken that down on Patreon before with Phil, by the way. If you want to go back to that episode, we covered most of those, although not Andrea Berta. Do you want to just quickly sort of bullet point your thoughts on each one?
My thought process on this is we need some new thinking in the club. It's as simple as that. You only know what you know. And we need some new thinking in the club, At the moment, Jason Ato's getting stick. He hasn't signed a striker. None of us know him. None of us know his remit. None of us know what his instructions are via the club. And so, but what we do know is that we're probably due a change in that area or an addition in that area. You know, I think some wisdom, people with different markets that they understand would be good, because none of us can sit here and say that we couldn't improve in the recruitment. We've done really well, but we need to go again, don't we? We need to go again. And I think with the people that we have, there could be a perceived limit with them. I said, let's see how we want to go. Do we want to go a broader role which covers all of football like Edu had? Do you want to segregate the role and have an organisational structural change? Do we want to start to think about a multi-club model or partnerships with other teams? How do we want to develop the women's game? There are many different things here. How do we want to improve our youth recruitment? That's already ongoing, but do we need some insight there? There are so many things to improve upon and get better at. If you keep with the same things, you only end up doing the same things with the same people. So I'm up for new thinking. I really am. Alabe is the one that I know the most because I read the most on him. Didn't know him until he resigned from Real Sociedad. But I sort of like the idea of him. And David doesn't waste too many words. And straight away, the Athletic wrote an article on him, went deep on him. And I've always thought, you know what? Maybe that's the one for us to go for. How we look as an organisation will be interesting. But yeah, I think it's time for new thinking, Elliot. And that may need to, I want to see a little bit of renewal from a squad perspective and maybe a slightly different renewal regarding approach. And I think that's absolutely fine. It's not a criticism. It's just evolution. If you stand still, you know what happens.
Yeah. I think promoting from within can be fine, but in this world that we are in right now, where the project maybe is hitting a plateau, I think I'd like a new voice to just freshen the thinking. So Ato may be brilliant and talented, but I'd like to freshen the thinking. Dan Ashworth is an interesting name for sure. I don't know that I like the Olabe thing. We seem very close with Real Sociedad. I don't know why, but I don't know that I think that's the right move. Thiago Scuro, again, similarly, a weird fit. Andrea Berta seems like an interesting choice because he worked for an iconoclastic kind of manager, a big character in that club who took a club that couldn't quite spend with the giants, but was a big club in its own right, that did spend big. They got Griezmann. They got Julian Alvarez from Man City. They have bought some big players. They played to a very specific style of a manager who wanted to play a certain way, and they went toe-to-toe with Titans for a number of years. I'm talking about Atletico Madrid, obviously. So Berta would be an interesting one to me because I think can spend big when needed, can achieve more than what is necessarily expected with there being bigger spenders in the league around him, can support a manager who's a big personality in the club. That could be an interesting one. I think what we'll do is maybe hold on any further analysis on this until we name one, because we did go through these candidates. So you can go to Patreon, you can find the episode I did with Phil, and you can listen to it. But we will have, we'll obviously have a very detailed analysis once we select one of these guys. We will obviously have a main pod on Monday that previews the PSV tie,
not G.
And yeah, and in the meantime, we will have some Patreon stuff for you along the way, and you should listen to that countdown episode. I think it's a lot of fun. So there's a lot out there. We love you. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a lot to get through the rest of the season, and we'll do a lot of the summer facing stuff. Like I said, director of football, scouting. We may get to scout Ekitike and Sesko again in the near future. So a lot of fun stuff. So Clive will be there with me for that every step of the way, of course. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. You block me everywhere at whatever I am. But the most important thing is that we love you. I'm looking forward to seeing some new friends in our community this weekend. And assuming I survive it, which is probably 50-50, we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, PSV 0.